CJ Stroud, Russell Wilson, and Sam Darnold all need to step it up big time in the postseason. We dig into the biggest things to watch in the playoffs this year that can have a big impact on fantasy in 2025 on today's episode of Locked On Fantasy Football.
You are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NFL fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked On Fantasy Football podcast. Thank you for making us your first listen every day. I'm one of your co-hosts, Michelle Magdziuk, and when I'm not doing this, I'm a researcher and fantasy analyst with NFL Network.
And I'm your other co-host, Vinnie Iyer. When I'm not doing this, I'm writing about NFL fantasy and betting for sportingnews.com.
Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the NFL playoffs with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets if you win or lose your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. All right, we are done with the regular season. We're done with fantasy season, but there's still a lot to learn. With these, you still have 14 teams in the playoffs where you can get some knowledge about, okay, what do we expect going into the 2025 season about some of these players? And I think right off the bat, the biggest question marks has to be, who will be mostly the Steelers quarterback, right? Because Sam Darnold has played well for most of the year for the Vikings. But if Sam Darnold falls on his face like he did in week 18, then is he the quarterback of the future for the Vikings? So I think the biggest things to watch is Russell Wilson and Sam Darnold. And will they be the quarterbacks of this team? Because that will matter a ton for fantasy next year.
Yeah, it's not been a good end of the season for Russell Wilson. I know there was a stretch where George Pickens was out, but Pickens came back, and then he had the struggles last week, and Mike Tomlin and that little dysfunction there. Now, all that good stuff that was happening in the middle of the season with Russell Wilson has seemed to have gone away as the matchups have gotten tougher. And the Ravens on paper have been a pretty good matchup. They're still seventh most favorable fantasy matchup for quarterbacks, but that's a lot from their early season woes. Since their bye, they've been really lights out. They were really dominant against the Texans, only allowed 2 points there. The second matchup against the Steelers, they absolutely destroyed them. They won 4 in a row. The Steelers have lost 4 in a row. So it's all lining up poorly here for the Steelers and having a lot of questions about the quarterback. And for the most part, their quarterback deal worked, right? They didn't spend a lot of money on Justin Fields or Russell Wilson. They did what they needed to do. They yet again get to the playoffs. They yet again have a winning record, but now you got to turn the corner. If you're going to go into the playoffs and lose and Mike Tomlin has more disappointment, is that all you're looking for? So first of all, I'm not going to look at Russell Wilson this week if I'm playing any kind of DFS or short-term things. You're not. You just can't go there and hope that he's going to just resurrect himself from that midseason stretch, even in the first matchup that we saw against this team. So I don't feel it there. And Sam Darnold's the other one there too. I don't think he's going to be brought back just because he's going to try to get a starting job elsewhere, like the Giants or some situation there that is going to pay him a lot more than I think the Vikings want to. And with J.J. McCarthy winning the wings, I think part of it is going to be how much progress that J.J. McCarthy made from the knee injury. But the bottom line is these systems really help these quarterbacks to some degree, but now the quarterback's true colors are starting to show up a little bit, where they're going to have some limitations physically in what they're going to do with the weapons around them. So, again, I don't have a lot of faith in Russ. I think Sam Darnold can put up some points here. They're playing the Rams. They're going back to Los Angeles, where he's from. And the Rams' defense has been better, but you just can't be too inspired by either quarterback.
Now, especially Russell Wilson, he's going to have a massive postseason to show the Steelers that he should be their quarterback of the future. I mean, the last 4 games, they lost 4 in a row. They're averaging 14 points per game in that 4-game losing streak. Russell has 4 passing touchdowns in those 4 games. He was looking really good to start in his first 7 starts, but not so much lately. And Sam Darnold's just Sam Darnold, but he gets really interesting because J.J. McCarthy becomes a really interesting late round target if he is going to be the starter for the Vikings next year. Now with CJ Stroud, he was a massive bust this year for fantasy. And we're going to see if he can step it up in this matchup. I don't think he will against this Chargers defense, or the number 1 defense in the league right now. He only has Nico Collins. The rest of his guys are injured, and he really, really, really struggles against zone coverage this year. And the Chargers play a ton of zone coverage, so I don't expect it to look better. But then if he falls flat on his face in this game, does he even get drafted in one quarterback leagues next year?
Yeah, it's tough to trust him. Again, when you don't have that running cheat code, you're really dependent on your pocket passing. And we saw some guys come through just doing that. Jared Goff, I mean, Baker Mayfield, they came through big time because they put up all the touchdowns. But if you don't put up the touchdowns and your weapons are dwindling, it's hard. I mean, Stroud, all the good vibes that he had with his weapons last year have kind of gone away. And Stephon Diggs was there, but then he couldn't stay healthy. He's now getting a year older, coming off a major injury. So we'll see about his future there. And then you have Tank Dell, who can't stay on the field here with his injury issues. So Nico Collins they paid, which is a good idea because he is clearly their number one. They need him desperately, but he's going to need some help there. I mean, John Mechie, he's shown a little bit, but just hasn't put it all together coming back from the injury. Got Robert Woods, who's ancient. He actually could have a decent game in here, getting some cheap passes underneath the zone coverage, but I don't think that's going to be a great day. It's going to probably end up for 5 catches for 50 at the most here. So I don't know. The Chargers defense is really tough. This is why they're favored on the road against the Texans. Against Stroud, I don't know. It just left a lot to be desired his second season, where I felt like Brock Purdy, being in a full season as a starter for a second time, you felt Purdy a little bit more still being put together, even with weapons and things falling around in a similar offense. But Stroud never gave us that vibe. And again, this could be a rough ending to the playoffs. And look, they played well last year. They beat the Browns. They had a nice run against the Ravens. But this year it could be just an absolute thud right away for this offense against the Chargers.
Yeah, and talking about the Chargers, their offense is starting to click big time because they're starting to let Justin Herbert be Justin Herbert. He's had 30 or more passing attempts in 7 of the final 8 games of the season. He only had 3 such games in the first 9 games of the season. They were running so much, not letting Herbert throw, but he's been throwing touchdowns as of late, at least 2 touchdowns in each of the last 4 games of the year. And, I think that's just the emergence of Ladd McConkey specifically. I know Quentin Johnson had that huge game in week 18, but I don't think that's why Herbert's been better, right? I think Ladd McConkey being his go-to guy has been huge. McConkey's had over 50 receiving yards in each of the last 10 games played. That's tied for the longest rookie streak all time with Malik Neighbors, which is kind of weird this year. But McConkey's coming along, and I want to see Justin Herbert and McConkey. I think they're going to win this game in Houston. I want to see them play a couple games and just keep continuing to see their growth together.
Yeah, the one thing that the Chargers were hoping for and anticipated was letting Keenan Allen and Mike Williams walk, that McConkey would be the slot guy and develop quickly as a rookie. And you would also see Quentin Johnson replace Mike Williams as kind of that deep threat who can also use his body and finish in the red zone. So they kept some of the same concepts with these receivers and what they did well in different roles here with different younger guys. And it's really worked out for Greg Roman as they've opened things up. And as you've seen Justin Herbert settle with both these guys a little bit more, because Johnson really didn't play as much. And then McConkey was a rookie. So Herbert has gotten more comfortable with the offense. As you do that with a quarterback, you open things up a little bit more, go away from that, and they needed to. And maybe that stretch where they didn't have J.K. Dobbins and was harder to run made them lean on Justin Herbert a little bit more. So that also led to this. So again, just great coaching by Harbaugh and Greg Roman leading to this. Look, they had to be run heavy early until they figured out some things. Now you got Dobbins in the mix, setting up this passing game. And what I like about the Chargers is their roles, right? McConkey, where he's lining up, Johnson, Dobbins is going to get the ball. Herbert's going to spread it around and also take his deep shots playing off the run. So I'm not saying it's a predictable offense, but you at least see the flow of it and see where they're going to produce. So I really appreciate that about the Chargers. Again, forget everything you know about the Chargers from the past. This is a different Chargers team, and Michelle's right. They can make some noise here with their offense beyond this first round of the playoffs.
Yeah. And of course, you want to see as much passing as possible. We love passing, right? We love points. We love excitement, but there's a lot of running back questions as well in these playoffs. There's some teams, a good handful of teams here that might be having openings as their lead running back next year if these guys don't show something in the postseason. So we'll get to the running back talk here just after we take a quick break. From big upsets to game-winning drives, the NFL playoffs are better with FanDuel because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. The FanDuel app gives you everything you need for live bets, same-game parlays, and so much more. I bet I like this weekend is the Commanders and Buccaneers to combine for over 50.5 points. I mean, you got two high-scoring offenses with bad defenses. What's better, right? Yes, please. You can also if you want to get on that bet, or you can take a look at all the other available bets. There's which team will win the game, which players will score a touchdown, how many yards a player will have in a game, and so on and so on. I mean, there's literally thousands of bets you can choose from. Just visit fanduel.com to join today and get started with $200 in bonus bets. That's fanduel.com. Make this season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, we talked about CJ Stroud, but also Joe Mixon he started on fire, right? But he's really, really fallen off at the end of the season with his efficiency. They're not giving him very much workload at all. Maybe he's he's not that old, but maybe he's just, coming down, or it's just the offense struggling in general. And then also Aaron Jones. Like, do we think these guys have any juice left? Because they're both, as the season progresses, struggling. Do we think that rolls into 2025?
Yeah, if we could give a special award for like the supernova of the year where a guy explodes and looks great and then just dies, it's Joe Mixon, right? He was great in the first half. If you want to give like a first half MVP, we might have been looking at Joe Mixon. But second half, he was right up there with the bus that we would put on. So Mixon is a slowdown, and this matchup is atrocious. Other than the Eagles and the Ravens who are playing this week, the Chargers are as hard as it gets against running backs in fantasy. And that means not just running the ball, but catching passes as well. They're just extremely tough. Their linebackers are active. They clean up well with Derwin James on the third level. So when you look at this, it's just going to be really hard for Mixon to get going. This is not the most inspirational spot here. But Aaron Jones, remember, let's not forget what he did in the playoffs last year for the Packers. He kind of has an extra pep in his step. He actually ran pretty well last week in the Lions game while they were still in it. And then you had that long run by Cam Akers, which ended in the fourth down stop in the red zone. So this team can run the ball because it's so dangerous downfield with the now Jordan Addison and Justin Jefferson. So you're going to open up the things in the running game and lanes, and the Rams are not exactly a shutdown defense. And I think that was the thing that flipped the first game. The Rams were able to control the game with a run, and I think the Vikings need to come out and do that here with Aaron Jones. So less concerned about Aaron Jones. I think he has some juice, but they might reevaluate the backfield. They obviously love Cam Akers because they've traded for him twice, and he's had some flashes here. So we'll see if they go in a different direction. But I think Mixon probably holds up, but I think they'll bring in someone that can push him a little bit. They didn't really have that person, right? Dameon Pierce faded from existence. You didn't really use anyone else to like cut into his work. So they need somebody to challenge him, kind of the situation we had that emerged with his old team, Cincinnati, where he had Zach Moss, he had Chase Brown to challenge him. Chase Brown had to take over because Moss can stay healthy. So something similar could develop there. But for this particular week, if I'm looking for a back, I'm looking for Jones more so than Mixon.
Yeah, I agree with you there. And I think I'm more worried about Mixon moving forward than Jones.
Yeah,
but also at the same time, Jones is already 30. And it's not like he's been putting up huge numbers either. So these might just be two backs to kind of stay away from next year unless Joe Mixon completely like shows that he still has it in this wild card game. Now, the Steelers are going to have a new lead back, it seems like, in 2025, right? Najee Harris, they did not extend him to that fifth-year option. He will be a free agent. He has not had a great year, averaging under 4 yards per carry. Again, they have not been utilizing him a lot at all, kind of just getting him out of the offense. But like, you need to see what type of usage they have for him in this game. You expect him probably to be one and done in the playoffs. So we might have one more game of Najee Harris in a Steelers jersey. But you're looking at him and then also the Commanders backfield. Like Brian Robinson Jr. has been completely silent basically since their week 14 bye. It's like they're only getting rushing yards from their quarterbacks and nothing from their backfield. So I think the Commanders and the Steelers could have huge openings come, this offseason.
And maybe you see Najee end up on the Commanders. Who knows? He's a veteran back that can power through, and they kind of have a power rushing offense there, so something to watch there. But I think Najee is a good candidate to get better on a different team. I
Yeah.
think he hasn't always had the reliable blocking, he hasn't had the reliable usage, but he's a first-round pick. He's got some talent. There's some things he could be like Josh Jacobs. He's never lived up to that, right, as a first rounder from Alabama, but there's some hopes there. I just think this situation has been all that great for him overall with his support and the way he runs in the system. So maybe it works out on another team, but this particular matchup, again, brutal. The Ravens, the Eagles, they're all in play this week. So Jacobs has got to face the Eagles. Harris has got to face the Ravens front. So I think it's the end. I think there was a lot of talk at the end of that game. Oh, Najee scored his last Steelers touchdown in the season finale. So that could be what comes to fruition here. So I would expect a lot more Jalen Warren checkdowns in this game. That's what you have to do to move the ball, kind of extension of the running game on the Ravens, where Brian Robinson Jr., look, he's a good talent, but he's a holdover from what they had. And they had to reevaluate this backfield. That's why they went out and got Austin Eckler. Unfortunately, he got hurt. But they did work in a lot of Jeremy Nichols and just changing this offense a little bit more and bringing in more guys to carry the ball. So I don't know how much they're committed to Brian Robinson. Again, I think he's a young, good back. He just might be a misfit in what they're particularly trying to do. Maybe he's an option for the Chiefs, say, to work in the backfield with Pacheco. If Pacheco's injury lingers, they're not going to stick with Kareem Hunt, but I think he would fit well in that type of system, carrying over from what he did with the enemy. So things to look at there. Well, I think the Commanders could definitely be on the move for a different type of back. So it'll be interesting to see what they get. The matchup is not as bad, but the Bucs, they were terrible against the run early in the season, but they shored up things, had Vita Vea come back, and they really started getting better. So I think it's going to be a tough game for the traditional running of Brian Robinson and the Commanders this week.
Yeah, I think Brian Robinson Jr. can be a good second back or split a backfield. But I do think they're going to be looking for someone a little bit more dynamic than him to kind of take over that lead role next year. We know the Broncos are going to be looking for a running back. It doesn't even matter what they do in these playoffs. We don't even have to talk about that. They desperately need a good running back. And I think every time J.K. Dobbins touches the ball this postseason, we all just need to kind of hold our breath, because if he can get through this postseason healthy, I do think he's still the Chargers' lead back next year, and we can feel a little bit more confident about him going into the year. Now we have a lot of wide receiver questions as well. A bunch of young guys, like will Keon Coleman step up? Some old guys that we need to. Do they have any life left in Cooper Kupp or Amari Cooper? So we'll talk about the youngs and the old wide receivers that we're looking at in the playoffs just after we take another quick break.
All right, this episode of Locked On Fantasy Football is brought to you by Prize Picks. It's a fun way to play daily fantasy sports here during the NFL playoffs. If you're like me and you want to make the most of these final weeks of action, we have 13 games left, Prize Picks comes in there for you. If you love football and want a chance to win real money while watching the games through the 3-day weekend, Prize Picks is the place for you. It's the best way to turn your sports opinions into cash with daily fantasy player projections. And here on Locked On Fantasy Football, we tend to go to Moores. We always go to Moores. They're in our predictions and picks here. We'll come with you on those picks on Friday's show. You just simply pick more or less on player stats, like total passing yards or rushing touchdown, and for a shot to win up to 1,000 times your money. You can make your picks in less than 60 seconds. And whether you're looking for a flex play to boost your payout and want to cash out quickly, Prize Picks has got you covered. With more than 10 million members and billions of winnings, it's clear that people are loving the platform. So again, check out the Friday show for our pick, our 6-pack pick of picks for Prize Picks. Here's a special offer for you, Locked On listeners. Download the app today and use the promo code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after you play your $5 lineup. That's Prize Picks. Run your game. Download the app today and use the promo code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's only at Prize Picks. Run your game.
Did Rocket Money help find any subscriptions you forgot about or that you were paying for twice? That definitely happened to me. I had a few subscriptions that I didn't even realize I was paying for, and Rocket Money made it so easy to track them all down. It's like having a personal assistant for your finances. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps you find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. It brings everything together in one place, whether it's subscriptions, your spending habits, or even the goals you want to hit this year. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions. For me, one of the best features is definitely the subscription tracker. It saved me a good amount of money because I like to sign up for those free trials and then completely forget about them and then end up paying like hundreds of dollars in it when I didn't want to pay anything at all. But I've used it to cancel services I wasn't using anymore, and I've already saved a ton. So cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. rocketmoney.com/lockedon. All right, let's talk about these young guys that we're looking for them to step up, right? And I think number one has to be Keon Coleman, right? He's a first round draft pick, hasn't done much at all. Was he first round or first of the second round?
Second round. I mean, he should have gone in first.
Yeah. But in week 18, he got a chance, right? It was with the backup quarterbacks, but 10 targets and it ended in 2 receptions for 31 yards. The week prior with Josh Allen got 7 targets, only 3 for 27. One of those was a touchdown though, but like he just really hasn't done much of anything at all. Can we see something from him? We expect the Bills to make a good long run here, so it might be a few games he gets. What would Keon Coleman have to do in the playoffs for you to want to draft him next year?
Yeah, I think he just has to make a little bit of impact. I'm not going to say he's going to do the Gabe Davis hype thing with the Bills that it all disappointed us for a couple of years, like chasing what he did in the playoffs. That really was carrying over for 2 years, which we should have learned our lesson. Now he's with the Jaguars. But when we look at Keon Coleman, I don't think he's going to do that, but I think he can score some touchdowns in the playoffs and be effective. We'll see about Amari Cooper's status. He's getting up there and he's hurt again. So that was a bust of a pickup in the middle of the season. And really DeAndre Hopkins kind of faded as well later. So it's not working out there, but Coleman is going to be their number one going forward. Now, if Cooper doesn't play, that means he's going to probably see Pat Surtain too in the first game. Not ideal for your first playoff game as a rookie. Surtain is also playing for a contract. He's a free agent next year. So maybe it could be a tough passing game. I'll just say that for this particular game. I mean, it's some good corners on the field on both teams here. So maybe this is the week, maybe get Dalton Kincaid going. He's another guy that we need to have a little bit more faith in to draft highly and believe in as a tight end one. So the Bills need to figure that out a little bit. I know Josh Allen is having an MVP caliber season because he's spread the ball around, but a lot of it's been taking over games with his legs, spreading it for big plays to a bunch of different guys. But this receiving core still has a lot of questions, right? It's kind of back to where we were at the beginning of this year. How's Khalil Shakir and Coleman and Kincaid all going to play out? So I think we'll learn not a lot just about Coleman, but really how the Bills plan to use these guys going forward. And another curveball we have to be prepared for is Joe Brady might leave and find a job, and then you were working at another offense that we have to go forward with.
Yeah, I think people should have learned from Brian Dable and maybe Kevin Stefanski that, like, hey, maybe Josh Allen makes you look a lot better than you are. So maybe don't hire Joe Brady as a head coach and let him stay with the Bills is all I'm saying with Josh Allen. Now, a couple other younger wide receivers we'll be watching. Marvin Mims has 4 touchdowns over the last 2 weeks, putting up he has 8 receptions, 5 receptions. 103 yards, 51 yards with those 2 touchdowns in each of those games. He's still not playing on many snaps, so that's the weird thing. It was 31% of the team snaps he played in week 18. Now, they were killing him, so maybe he left early. But before that, 46%, 46, 25, 34. Like, he's never played more than 47% of any snaps in this year's game or any game this year. So Marvin Mims is still struggling to get on the field. I would like to see more playing time from him with the production he's been putting up. And then Jalen McMillan has been killing it, right? Rookie, 3rd-round rookie for the Buccaneers. I just want to see him keep getting targets, keep showing up to really prove to this team, like, hey, you don't need to go out and get a different wide receiver too, right? Like, I can be your wide receiver too.
Yeah, we'll see about the Chris Godwin situation. I'll talk about McMillan first, where this could actually be a key game for McMillan, however it plays out here, because you do have potential for Marshall Lattimore. We'll see. And you know what he does. He loves to face up against Mike Evans. And look, Mike Evans got a break because he played the Saints without Lattimore, but now he might have to face him. So if that happens, the old friends will lock up here. And then you get the Benjamin St. Juste matchup, could line up very well for Joe McMillan. He runs most of his routes outside. That's been the difference here. With Godwin has done a lot of the slot before, but McMillan is an outside guy for the most part. So that helps, right? If he gets St. Juste or even Mike Sanistril, who's a rookie from Michigan. So either matchup is great if he can get away from what Lattimore can do. So that I like that. It might be also an opportunity for Marvin Mims, right? There's really two good corners for the Bills. You have Teron Johnson on the inside, so that could be hard for Devon Bailey. I don't know if he's going to win that. And Cortland Sutton could really be in a monumental spot here with Christian Benford. So that could open some stuff. Can they get him on Rasul Douglas? He's a little bit older. Mims has got some speed. Can they get him in open field and do that as an extension of the running game, shorter passes to him? So I think you just want to get Mims in the open field as much as possible, shorter passes to the outside, because the Bills do struggle a bit with their linebackers, and he can make some linebackers miss with his speed. So there's a definite potential for Mims and McMillan to have pretty big wildcard games in separate spots here this week.
Yeah, I'm excited to watch them both. I think McMillan will have a good wild card week. And Mims, if he can just get on the field, like there's something Sean Payton does not want him on the field for some reason. I would just love to see him get more opportunity. And I do think he could be a very good player in this league. Now, one thing we really have to pay attention to here is the Packers wide receiver room, because if they don't step up here, I think it's time for the Packers to get Jordan Love a real wide receiver one, right? I mean, I know that was the thing with Aaron Rodgers for a long time. It was like, oh, he doesn't have good enough wide receivers outside of Devontae Adams. But Jordan Love doesn't even have a Devontae Adams, right? And now Christian Watson, I think it's official that he tore his ACL. So he's not even going to be back next year. I mean, who knows when he gets back? And Love's numbers dropped dramatically with Christian Watson on and off the field. Watson's not a great wide receiver, but he's impactful to the offense in terms of getting people open because of his speed, and defenses having to worry about him. But Love's passing yards per attempt dropped from 8.8 to 7.0 without Watson on there. Love has 25 explosive passes with Watson off the field this year. He has 50 with him on the field. And it's about, half at 239 pass attempts with Watson, 212 with him off. So 50-50 there. And his completion percentage drops, like everything drops without Christian Watson. So we need to see Jaden Reed and Romeo Doubs pick up big time in the playoffs.
Yeah, and this is not the easiest matchup, by the way. I mean, you have the two rookies playing very well, Quinion Mitchell on the outside. You have the old veteran there, Darius Slay, and then Cooper DeJean could see a lot of Jaden Reed in the slot, and that's not the best thing. So maybe you can prey on their inexperience a little bit, but it's not like Reed has a lot of experience. He's in year 2. And then you got Doubs. Look, he's an okay receiver, but he should be really a complimentary number 2. I think he's a guy that you might be able to keep. Reed is okay in the slot, but they need somebody to play off who's an alpha. And look, the Packers and their fans have known this about not wanting to take a first-round wide receiver. It's been like a thing. They thought Watson would be another Adams as a second-round pick, but that hasn't materialized. But they need a clear alpha, as you mentioned, for Jordan Love. Again, Doubs and Reed, I think, would really operate well if they can go out and get a number 1 that really is reliable. And that's the biggest thing about Watson. He's not reliable. He's not available in most of the games. He's flashy and he makes a lot of big plays, but he's just not a guy that's going to be out there quite a bit. So maybe we'll see who's out there. Maybe it's an Isaiah Bond that they can look for late in the first round, the Packers, to help them. But they need somebody who can just run routes, dominate here all over the field. But again, in this particular game, I mean, you just can't feel really good about the matchups anywhere against this Eagles pass defense.
No, you really can't. I do think if they lose this game and their wide receivers don't step up, I know the Packers never take a wide receiver in the first round, like you said, but they have, like, maybe not even the first round, but they're going to have to use some resources on getting Love a true wide receiver 1, or at least trying to. Now, lastly here, we brought up Amari Cooper. It doesn't seem like he has anything left in the tank, really, and he might not even play in the wild card. But does Cooper Kupp have anything left in the tank? I think we need to see, right? I mean, because these last 3 games, brutal for him that he's played. It's really 4 out of the last 5 games that he's played too. Can Cooper Kupp step up in the playoffs and show that, no, I'm not just an old man. I can still play in this league.
Yeah, I think they're going to have to be careful and use him in the right situations. And he actually might have more success outside because the Vikings kind of stink on the outside corners, but they're decent because they have a guy he knows pretty well from the Cardinals, Byron Murphy Jr. He'll be in the slot. Kupp is playing a little bit less on the slot. I think it's close to like 55 to 60% right now. So they need to kind of work him away. And maybe he's more of a situational guy, right? They have to get him in the red zone, try to do that, but they're not really looking for him to make the big plays. That's Puka Nacua. They'll bring in somebody else to stretch the field. We've seen it a lot with Demarcus Robinson and those big plays, the shots. They're not willing to line up Kupp and take him deep. And partly it's, again, he's wearing down. He's had a lot of injuries. He's going to turn 32 in June. So it would not surprise me if this is the last run here for Cooper Kupp. I mean, a lot of injuries. He's done it all. He's had a big contract. Doesn't really need to be out there. He's won a Super Bowl, so this could be it. I mean, this guy could have had probably a Hall of Fame career if he had stayed healthy. He was awesome and the best player at his position when healthy, but it was such a short period of time, I feel like maybe 3.5 seasons where we saw that. So Cooper Kupp, again, good run. We'll see. I think the biggest Rams question is they're out. Does Matthew Stafford want to come back? Do they feel it here with Kupp, or do they say, okay, we got Puka, we got Kyron Williams, let's just turn the page and go totally youthful on our team here going forward?
Yeah, Stafford's been struggling as of late too, so this could be the last time we see that Stafford and Cooper Kupp connection. It will be interesting. So many great things to watch in these playoffs. We will get to some DFS talk on tomorrow's show, I believe. On Thursday. So I want to thank you all for giving us our listen. And if you're on YouTube, hit that subscribe button, give us a like on whatever podcast app you're listening to. We appreciate you all. We'll talk to you tomorrow. Bye, y'all.